I never imagined my life would take such a peculiar turn at 60. Retirement had barely sunk in when the reality of my solitude came crashing down. After 35 years of teaching literature and raising 3 children who barely called anymore, I found myself in a vacuum. Work had been my anchor, and now, without it, I was adrift. Worse still, society had me pegged, an old, washed-up divorcee who ought to fade into the background gracefully. Before I continue with this story, please support me by subscribing and turning on the notification. Thank you for subscribing. Now let's continue. That's why I booked the trip to Ghana. I needed to escape. A change of scenery, fresh air, and perhaps the illusion of freedom. It was on a whim, really, but when the plane touched down in Accra, the humid air greeting me like an old friend, I knew I had made the right choice. I stayed in a cozy beachfront resort in Cape Coast, where the sea stretched out endlessly, whispering secrets to the golden sand. The first few days were uneventful morning walks, lazy afternoons under palm trees, and evenings spent with my journal and a glass of wine. Then came the day I met Kwame. It was a Tuesday, I think. I had ventured further down the shore, seeking solitude when I first noticed him. He was standing with a group of young men near a fishing boat, his laughter rising above the crashing waves. He was tall, lean, and impossibly handsome, his ebony skin glistening in the sunlight. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of something I hadn't felt in years, desire. I dismissed it immediately, shaking my head at the absurdity. Later that evening, as I sat at the resort's bar, nursing my second cocktail, he appeared again. He walked in with the confidence of someone who knew he was being watched. To my surprise, he made a beeline for me. "Good evening, madam," he said, his voice smooth and rich. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." I looked up, startled. Up close, he was even more breathtaking. His broad shoulders and chiseled jawline were the stuff of romance novels. But his eyes, deep and earnest, unsettled me the most. "Not at all," I replied cautiously. "I noticed you earlier at the beach," he continued, flashing a smile that could melt steel. "You looked lost in thought. I thought I should come say hello." I laughed nervously, unsure of what to make of this. "Well, thank you for your concern. I'm just here on vacation, trying to relax." "And have you succeeded?" he asked, leaning slightly closer. I hesitated. "Not quite." "Well, maybe I can help." His boldness caught me off guard, and for a moment, I was speechless. He introduced himself as Kwame and began talking about the town, sharing anecdotes about life in Ghana and his dreams of becoming a photographer. Despite my initial wariness, I found myself drawn to his charisma. But when he complimented my smile, I stiffened. "You don't have to flatter me," I said, half joking. "I'm old enough to be your mother." "Age is just a number," he replied without missing a beat. "And you're beautiful. Anyone with eyes can see that." I laughed again, this time louder, to mask the sudden fluttering in my chest. He was young, too young. He couldn't possibly be serious. Over the next few days, I saw him everywhere. He always found a reason to stop and talk, whether it was to recommend a local dish or invite me for a walk along the beach. At first, I thought he was after my money. But he never asked for anything, not even when I offered to buy him a drink. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, he found me sitting alone by the water. "Why do you always sit here alone?" he asked, settling down beside me. Because it's peaceful, I replied, not looking at him. Or maybe you're hiding, he said softly. His words hit a nerve, and I turned to face him, ready to protest. But the look in his eyes stopped me. It wasn't pity, it was understanding. I've seen you, he continued. You carry a sadness, but also strength. You're like the ocean, calm on the surface, but with so much depth underneath. Something inside me cracked open at that moment. Vulnerability rushed in like a tide, and for the first time in years, I let myself feel it all, the loneliness, the longing, the fear of being invisible. And Kwame saw it all. Before I knew it, I was telling him everything about my divorce, my children, and the suffocating weight of societal expectations. He listened intently, his gaze never wavering. You deserve to be happy, he said when I finished. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. His words stayed with me long after he walked me back to my room that night. They played on a loop in my mind as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, I felt seen, truly seen. The next day, when he invited me to join him for a walk, I didn't hesitate. We strolled along the beach, laughing and talking like old friends. He was charming, yes, but also kind and intelligent. And as the days turned into weeks, I found myself looking forward to our time together. But there was another feeling, one I tried desperately to ignore, desire. It simmered beneath the surface, growing stronger with every lingering glance, every accidental touch. It was absurd, I told myself. He was young enough to be my son. But my body didn't care about logic. One night, after too many glasses of wine, I found myself standing outside his door. My heart was pounding, my palms sweaty. Before I could change my mind, I knocked. He opened the door, surprise flickering across his face before it softened into a smile. Is everything okay? He asked. I hesitated, my mind screaming at me to turn around. But then he reached out, his hand brushing mine, and all my reservations melted away. I don't know what I'm doing, I whispered. You don't have to know, he said, pulling me inside. For the first time in decades, I let go of my inhibitions. I allowed myself to be vulnerable, to feel wanted, to be alive. The moment was electric, raw, and so far from what I thought I could still experience at my age. His touch was gentle yet firm, his lips exploring mine with a hunger that mirrored my own. For a fleeting moment, I questioned everything. What would my children think? What would people say? But when his hands slid down my back, pulling me closer, every doubt dissolved. That night with Kwame was unlike anything I had ever known. He worshipped me in ways I didn't think possible, his every move deliberate, as though he had spent a lifetime preparing for this moment. I had always felt invisible, but under his gaze, I was radiant, desired, alive. The days that followed were a whirlwind. We spent our mornings exploring the town, wandering through bustling markets, and sharing quiet moments on the beach. At night, we lay tangled in each other's arms, whispering secrets under the moonlight. Still, I couldn't silence the voice in my head that kept asking why. Why me? Why now? Was it truly love, or just a fleeting infatuation? One evening, as we sat on the terrace of the resort, watching the waves lap at the shore, I finally asked him, "Why are you doing this, Kwame?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm old enough to be your mother. People will talk. They'll say you're only with me because you think I have money." He turned to me, his expression serious. Let them talk, he said. I don't care what they think. And I don't want your money, Mary. I want you. I searched his face for any sign of deceit, but there was none. His sincerity was disarming, and for the first time, I allowed myself to believe him. You deserve to be happy, he said, taking my hand in his. You've spent your whole life giving to others. Let someone give to you for a change. His words stayed with me long after the conversation ended. I wanted to believe him, but years of self-doubt and societal judgment had built a fortress around my heart. Breaking through it wouldn't be easy. The turning point came on our last day in Cape Coast. We had spent the morning exploring the Elmina Castle, its dark history a stark contrast to the vibrant life outside. As we walked back to the resort, Kwame suddenly stopped and turned to me. "Marry me," he said, his voice steady. I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but his expression didn't waver. "Kwame, be serious," I said, though my heart was racing. "I am serious," he replied. "I love you, Mary. I know it sounds crazy, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life." I stared at him, my mind spinning. This wasn't part of the plan. This was supposed to be a vacation fling, a fleeting escape from reality. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized that somewhere along the way, he had become my reality. "I don't know what to say," I murmured. "Say yes," he said, smiling. "Say you'll take a chance on us." And just like that, the walls I had spent years building came crashing down. "Yes," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, I'll marry you." The next few days were a blur. Kwame helped me pack, and we booked our flights to Texas, where I would introduce him to my children. As we boarded the plane, hand in hand, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and dread. How would they react? Would they understand? I imagined their faces, the shock, the questions, the judgment. But then I thought of Kwame, of the way he made me feel, and I knew I couldn't let anyone take that away from me. As the plane took off, I leaned my head on his shoulder, my heart full of a strange, intoxicating mix of love and defiance. This was my life, my happiness. For the first time in decades, I was choosing me. And no one, not even my children, would take that away. Please like and subscribe for more stories like this one. Thanks for watching.